What if I told you that every time you scroll through your phone deciding which photo to post, you are actively constructing a prison for your own mind? What if the very act of curating your online presence is slowly disconnecting you from the only thing that ever truly mattered, the raw, unfiltered experience of being alive? And what if one of the most profound philosophers of the 20th century saw this coming decades before Instagram even existed? Picture this. You are at a beautiful sunset on a beach. The colors are extraordinary, oranges and purples bleeding into each other across the horizon. But instead of feeling the warm sand between your toes, instead of letting the salt air fill your lungs, instead of simply being present in that sacred moment, you are adjusting angles, testing filters, thinking about captions. You take 15 photos before you find one acceptable enough to share. And by the time you look up again, the sunset is gone. You captured the image, but you missed the experience entirely. Or imagine you are at dinner with friends you have not seen in months. The food arrives, beautiful and fragrant. But before anyone takes a bite, phones emerge like synchronized swimmers. Everyone photographs their plates. Some stand up to get better lighting. The conversation pauses while people crop and edit. The food grows cold. The moment of genuine connection, of laughter and warmth and presence, dissolves into a collective performance for invisible audiences who are not even there. Or consider this. You wake up on a Sunday morning with nothing to do. The sunlight filters through your curtains. You feel genuinely peaceful for the first time in weeks. And then a thought creeps in. Should I share this? Would this make a good story? Is this moment valuable if no one knows about it? Suddenly, the peace evaporates. You are no longer in the moment. You have become a spectator of your own life, watching yourself live instead of actually living. Have you ever felt like you are performing your existence rather than experiencing it? Have you ever wondered when exactly life stopped being something you live and became something you broadcast? Have you ever had the quiet suspicion that the version of you that exists online is slowly consuming the version of you that exists in the real world? If any of this resonates with you, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not crazy. You are experiencing something that a brilliant philosopher named Alan Watts warned us about long before the digital age made it universal. He understood that human beings have a dangerous tendency to mistake the menu for the meal, to confuse representations of life with life itself. And in our current world of constant documentation and endless sharing, his insights have become more urgent than ever. Alan Watts was a British philosopher who became one of the most influential interpreters of Eastern philosophy for Western audiences. Born in 1915 and living until 1973, he had the unique ability to translate ancient wisdom into language that ordinary people could understand and apply. He studied Zen Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism, but he was never interested in creating converts or promoting any particular religion. What fascinated him was the question of how human beings can actually experience reality directly, without the filters of concepts and symbols and self-consciousness that usually stand between us and the raw truth of existence. Watts was particularly concerned with what he called the confusion between the map and the territory. We create symbols and representations to help us navigate reality, whether those symbols are words, money, social roles, or images. But we have a dangerous habit of becoming so absorbed in our symbols that we forget they are just symbols. We start treating the map as if it were the actual territory. We get so focused on our ideas about life that we lose contact with life itself. When Watts spoke about authenticity, he was not using it as a buzzword or a marketing term. He meant something very specific. Authentic living means being in direct contact with your experience exactly as it is, without constantly translating it into thoughts about how it should be recorded or perceived or judged by others. It means allowing yourself to exist without commentary, without narration, without the endless internal monologue that turns every moment into content for some imaginary audience. This is precisely what our photo-obsessed culture destroys. Every time you reach for your camera to document an experience, you step out of the experience itself. You become a spectator rather than a participant. You split yourself into two, the one who lives and the one who watches and records. And this split, according to Watts, is the fundamental disease of the modern mind. We are so busy watching ourselves live that we never actually live. Consider how this plays out in practice. Research has shown that taking photos of experiences actually reduces our memory of those experiences. When we photograph something, we are essentially outsourcing the task of remembering to an external device. Our brains, knowing that a record exists elsewhere, do not encode the moment as deeply. We end up with a photograph of an experience we barely remember having. We have the documentation, but we have lost the thing itself. There is also the phenomenon of experience selection. When we know we might photograph something, we unconsciously start evaluating experiences based on their photographic potential rather than their intrinsic value. We choose restaurants based on how Instagram-worthy the food looks rather than how it tastes. We visit locations because they make good backdrops rather than because they move us. We start living a curated life optimized for external presentation rather than internal fulfillment. Watts would have recognized this immediately as a form of what he called Maya, the Sanskrit term for illusion. We are creating an illusory version of our lives that exists primarily in the realm of images and perceptions. We then begin relating to this illusion as if it were more real than our actual moment-to-moment experience. The photo becomes more important than the sunset. The documentation becomes more important than the dinner. The record becomes more important than the relationship. I want to pause here for a moment because I know that what we are discussing is not just theoretical for you. Right now, you might be recognizing patterns you have lived with for years, patterns that you have perhaps sensed were problematic but could never quite articulate. That vague feeling of emptiness after posting something that got lots of likes. That strange sense of disconnection, even while surrounded by people, because part of your mind was always thinking about how the moment might be captured and shared. When was the moment you first realized that your phone had become a barrier between you and your own life? When did you first notice that you were experiencing things through a screen even when the screen was not there, mentally composing posts even when you had not taken a photo? That moment when it suddenly became clear that something precious was being lost. If you are comfortable, share in the comments below. I first noticed this pattern when, and finish the sentence. Your experience, shared openly or anonymously, creates a light for someone else who is walking that same path right now, feeling completely alone in their struggle. Every time you share a piece of your story, you are doing exactly what Watts would have celebrated, creating genuine human connection through honesty rather than through performance. And if you are not ready to share, that is completely okay too. Just know that as you continue watching, I am speaking directly to your experience, not just to some abstract audience. The tension you have felt between your online self and your real self is precisely what we are addressing here. Now let us go deeper into why this happens. Why do we feel such a powerful compulsion to photograph and share our lives? Watts would point to a fundamental insecurity at the core of the modern self. We do not quite believe that we exist unless we are being perceived. We need external validation to feel real. And in an age where that validation can be quantified through likes and comments and shares, the addiction becomes almost irresistible. This is connected to what Watts called the skin-encapsulated ego, his term for the Western illusion that we are isolated individuals separate from the world around us. When you believe you are a separate self, cut off from everything else, you naturally feel anxious and incomplete. You seek reassurance that you matter, that you exist, that you are seen. Social media offers an endless stream of such reassurance, but like all addictions, it never actually satisfies. Each hit of validation creates a craving for more. The person who does not constantly post photos, according to this understanding, is someone who has begun to see through this illusion. They have started to realize that they do not need external proof of their experiences to make those experiences real. They can stand on a mountain or sit with a friend or watch their child play without feeling the urgent need to convert the moment into content. They are present in a way that the constant documenters simply cannot be. This does not mean photography is inherently bad. Watts was never about absolute rules or puritanical prohibitions. The question is always about your relationship to the activity. Are you taking a photo to genuinely remember something? Or are you taking it because you feel anxious about existing without documentation? Are you sharing something because it might genuinely help or connect with others? Or are you sharing it to construct an image of yourself that you hope others will admire? The authentic person, in Watts's sense, does not live for the image. They are not constantly performing. They have what he called the wisdom of insecurity, the ability to exist without needing constant reassurance and validation. They can handle the uncertainty of being a finite mortal creature in a vast, mysterious universe without frantically trying to pin their existence down through endless documentation. How do you recognize if you have fallen into the documentation trap? There are several signs. You find yourself thinking about how to photograph an experience while the experience is still happening. You feel uncomfortable or even anxious about enjoyable experiences that cannot be easily captured or shared. You catch yourself comparing your real life to the curated lives you see online, feeling that yours is somehow less than. You realize that some of your happiest-seeming moments online were actually quite stressful to produce. You notice that you cannot remember experiences you have photographed as well as you remember experiences you simply lived. If you recognize yourself in these descriptions, the good news is that Watts offered a way out. His approach was never about self-improvement in the conventional sense. He was not interested in adding another layer of effort and striving onto already overwhelmed lives. Instead, he suggested something more radical. Simply notice what you are doing. Become aware of the pattern. See it clearly without judgment. When you reach for your phone to photograph something, pause. Not to stop yourself, but simply to notice. What is the impulse behind this action? Is there a feeling of anxiety that drives it? A sense that the moment is not quite real unless captured? A desire to show someone that you were here, that you experienced this, that you matter? Just observe these impulses with curiosity rather than judgment. This simple act of awareness begins to change everything. When we see our patterns clearly, they start to loosen their grip. We do not have to fight them or suppress them. We just have to illuminate them with consciousness. The very act of noticing that you are about to step out of an experience in order to document it begins to reconnect you with the experience itself. Watts would also suggest cultivating what he called purposeless attention, the ability to pay attention to something without any goal, without trying to get anything from it, without needing it to be useful or shareable or valuable in any conventional sense. Can you watch a sunset without photographing it? Can you eat a beautiful meal without documenting it? Can you spend time with someone you love without proving to the world that you did? This is the practice of authenticity. It also helps to periodically create what we might call documentation-free zones in your life. Times when you deliberately leave your phone behind or at least commit to not taking photos. Let yourself have experiences that exist only in your memory and nowhere else. You might be surprised to find that these undocumented moments often feel more real, more vivid, more meaningful than the ones you carefully capture and share. The deeper philosophical point here is about trust. Do you trust that your life is meaningful even if no one else sees it? Do you trust that your experiences are real even without external validation? Do you trust that you exist, that you matter, that your time on this earth is precious, regardless of how many people know about it? This is the kind of trust that Watts spent his life trying to help people develop. Those who do not constantly post photos are not necessarily happier or more enlightened, but they may have touched something important. They may have discovered that the real treasure was never in the documentation, but in the direct experience itself. They may have found that the most profound moments in life are often the ones that cannot be captured. The subtle shift in how light falls through a window, the quality of silence shared with someone you love, the mysterious feeling of simply being alive without needing it to be anything more than it is. This is what authenticity means in the context of Watts's teaching. Not a curated image of authenticity, not a brand of casual effortlessness, not a style of posting that signals you are above posting, but actual, genuine presence, being where you are, seeing what you see, feeling what you feel. Without the constant intermediary of the camera, the filter, the audience, here is your challenge for this week. Choose one day. Or if that feels too difficult, choose one afternoon or evening, when you will experience your life without any documentation. Leave your phone at home, or at least commit to not taking any photos or posting anything. Whatever you do that day, let it exist only in your direct experience and memory. Notice how it feels. Notice what arises. Notice whether you feel relief or anxiety or both. And then, if you are willing, come back here and share what you discovered. Not a photo, not a polished summary, just an honest reflection on what it felt like to exist without documentation, even briefly. If you have ever felt trapped by the compulsion to constantly capture and share your life, you are not alone on this journey. This channel is a space where we explore real alternatives to the performance culture that dominates our world. By subscribing, you are not just following content. You are joining a community of people who are asking important questions about how to live more authentically in a world that constantly pressures us to perform. Each week, we explore another insight from philosophers like Alan Watts that you can apply immediately to transform your relationship with yourself, with others, and with the mysterious experience of being alive. These are not superficial tips or quick fixes. They are profound shifts in perspective that have helped countless people find more peace, more presence, more genuine connection. I know how isolating it can feel when you sense that something is wrong with how we are all living, but you cannot quite name it. That is why I am committed to creating content that meets you exactly where you are. Subscribe so we can continue this journey together, one insight at a time at your own pace. If something in today's video resonated with you, that is not coincidence. It is recognition. Your mind is ready for a different way of being. Hit subscribe and let us discover what becomes possible when you stop performing your life and start actually living it. I will be here, every step of the way. Share in the comments one moment when you realized you were more focused on documenting an experience than living it. Your honesty might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now.